Este.
Yeah.
I'm a dancing queen. That's just a warm up.
Hola, pues así es como comenzamos la entrevista hoy. Estamos con Jared
Ficklin.
Ok, ¿cómo estás, Jared? How are you?
Muy bien.
El día de hoy estamos aquí en Isopixel en un evento que se llama Cut Out, el cual nos están enseñando pues varios cortometrajes. Estamos en la ciudad de Querétaro y tengo de invitada a Vale de Hipertextual. Estamos
Hola.
ahora sí que compartiendo esta entrevista para hacerla más robusta para todos ustedes. Así que, hi again, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Muy bien. It's been a wonderful journey here, and the city is so beautiful. I'm already excited for the festival.
Please, tell us about you. What do you do? Tell us a little bit, why are you here? All that stuff.
Well, I'm here for the tacos.
Okay,
I've
that's
already been
nice.
told that. I am a product designer from Austin, Texas. I work at a company called Argo Design. We're a product design firm, and we work on like the things that you carry around in your pocket and have in your house. I've worked on everything from washing machines to the Xbox. And I also work a lot on voice and gesture systems, and I think about the future. That's half of me. The other half is I like to do interactive installations that like really examine the boundary between humans and technology. And I think somebody saw some of those installations and videos and invited me to come to the festival, and they said it's a festival for animation and interactive art. I was like, well, I need to be there.
So please welcome to Mexico.
Thank you.
So
Besides the things we have on our pockets and Xbox and gadgets, you are very interested in cities, right?
Oh yeah, that as well.
Tell us about.
So as if I don't have enough to do in my day, I also spend a lot of time thinking about transportation in cities and urban cable in particular, and self-driving vehicles and what all the impacts of those will be on our cultural fabric when they come together. We're at a sea change where we don't have to think about the big three, train, car, and bus, for transportation. There's so many brand new technologies, from autonomous vehicles to urban cable, which is a form of gondolas, which I think actually you have going in Mexico City right now, and also things like Hyperloop. So it's a very exciting time. So I work on that as well, and I've even designed a few skate parks.
Well, Daniela and me lived in Mexico City, which, as you know, it's a big, chaotic, populated city. It's a chaos. And well, what do you think? And well, transportation can be described as painful in Mexico City. What are the things you think the people in Mexico City and the government should do for upgrade this experience of transportation?
It's a difficult problem when you have established eminent domain. When all your buildings are built, when your roads are in place, it's very hard to add in mass transit. But I try to talk about a theory of additive supply, which is wherever you can add transit. You can't solve traffic. You can't solve the chaos. But what you can do is add as many transportation options as possible. And this is going to come in two forms. One, there's brand new technologies that can add supply, like urban cable can go over top of a very straight street, or it can fly right over the barrio, right up the mountaintop, and suddenly you have a brand new bus line without having to build a road that could carry, you know, the same as 100 buses per hour, and all of a sudden, a few thousand people an hour have a new place to go. The second thing is that technology is going to change it, right? Humans are very bad at solving this chaos problem. We make very bad decisions about it, like looking at our phone instead of going forward when the light turns green, or choosing a very poor route, or social facilitation. So like at the same time of the day, we all decide to leave work and we all decide to take the same route because we think it's the best. All these things add to chaos. Well, technology is really good. Computers are really good at sorting out chaos. And so when autonomous vehicles come in and the cities get more sensors and data into them, we're going to be able to make more use of the existing infrastructure, and we're going to be able to advise people to make better choices to get around. And just the simple fact, like Uber itself. Uber is in Mexico City, and I've heard that it's very popular.
Yeah, it's Mexico is their second or third market for Uber.
And it's also growing, right? Because there are a lot of services. Uber is not the only one. It's also Cabify, Easy Taxi. There are a lot of them.
And what are they offering really at their core is, yes, they've lowered friction. Okay, it's easy to pay for it because it happens through a device. But the other thing they've done is predictability instead of chaos. When you pull out the app and it plans your route, it uses all the data of ways and everything to give you a good sense of how long it's going to take to get there. And then when you're in the vehicle, you're not occupied. You actually are free because you're not the one driving to participate in entertainment or productivity on your devices. Autonomous vehicles are just going to double down on this. So my advice is just additive supply. Look to a broad range of technologies, put them in wherever you can, and just keep adding options for the people.
Jared, the way you talk us, I would say you are a techno-optimist. Am I right?
Yes, I'm a big optimist. I talk a lot about technologies that people sometimes would say creep them out, like voice in the home, conversational computing, like Alexa, Echo.
Assistants, right?
Yeah, personal assistants, right?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence being applied to our digital selves that are out there. And a lot of people are like, I don't want a computer knowing what I have for lunch. I'm like, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I am fine with a computer knowing what I want for lunch. And actually, computers don't care what you have for lunch. But people care what you had for lunch. So we need to work hard to build the kind of societies where people don't care what you have for lunch, where people value privacy as a virtue. And it's built into the technology as well. And then we can have all these really cool things like a personal assistant, so as I'm leaving the home, I can say, it can tell me what my meetings are for the day or recommend a certain path or what have you. More of that in my presentation.
What do you think about Mexico, talking about technology? Have you ever seen something you want to talk about, the digital divide? Yeah, I mean, the gap, of course, that it's sometimes if you see countries like South Korea or Japan or Abu Dhabi, you can see a lot of infrastructure. I'm sorry, Mr. Peña Nieto. And if you see here in Mexico, you only have to be, in Mexico City to have all that kind of stuff. But if you're outside of the Mexico City, you see a lot of places that are, that the technology is not there.
Yeah, and it's same in the U.S. to a certain degree as well. It's very diverse in Mexico, right? You have a very modern, established city in Mexico City of a lot of countries. But the digital divide is there, but it's also an opportunity. And what you will likely see, or what we could see, the opportunity that is there, is that a lot of those parts of Mexico are going to be able to skip whole steps of infrastructure and catch up very quickly as soon as they want to, much quicker than we think. Because they're not going to have to go through the copper phase, where they're laying copper everywhere. They're going to be able to jump right to wireless. They're not going to have to go through the personal computer phase or the hard-wired network phase. You're going to be able to jump right to the smartphone as their dominant computer or single-function computers. They're not going to have to deal with the era where everything had super high power demands. And think of all the infrastructure that's in place in Mexico City to support those phases and how expensive it was and how cheap it is now. And if you were to go out into some village in Mexico, somewhere between here and Sonora or something, and they decided they were going to go digital, it's going to be much easier for them to close that gap. So to a certain degree, the divide is there by choice.
I don't really know. It could be, but it's difficult to say because people want to be there, you know.
Yeah.
Some of them, but sometimes they really can't.
Just can't because there's no telecommunication between
Right.
the
Of course.
server and the
Well,
what's
that's the thing,
Yeah.
is we don't have to think about it as being as expensive as modernizing Mexico City, because we can do it with wireless, we can do it with less expensive technology than it took to do Mexico City. That's kind of my point. So you could take this video and this village, this fake village that we made up, and say, what does it really now cost to get them online? It really just costs a wireless tower, a certain amount of smartphones, right? We don't have to lay whole miles of copper wires into the ground. We don't have to put in cable modems or any of those old technologies. Then there's going to have to be education, right? You have to know how to use the devices.
Yeah, because she was talking about that.
What good does the device do if you're illiterate or cannot read? What good does the device do if all it describes are other technologies that you have no access to? We had a very interesting project we did in China where the automobile is coming to China now. And what good is an application on how to fix your car if you don't have a car? Right? So in other words, there's got to be things that are relevant to them in their village to even want or need the technology, and that's kind of what I meant by choice. And you could think of some of those things. If it's a farming community, you could think, you know, how inexpensive is it today compared to other days to you know, it's like Kickstarter's out here to put sensors in the field, right? And then something like we work with a company called FarmLink that will take that kind of data and satellite data and aggregate it and give you a report, and they do it much less expensive than they did. These are the kind of things that would really help them once they got access. So I'm putting an optimistic view on it. Again, obviously there's some real realities here in terms of distribution of resources and wealth. But I think the optimistic side of it is it could be done for a lot less expensive than we think, because we're measuring it based on how expensive it was to build Mexico City, and we don't have to do 20 of the steps that we did. We can jump right to the end technology. This is happening in Africa and China. So I started a story in China, I didn't finish it, but they had to, people who were buying cars, they had to have technology to teach them things that we take for granted, like you put gas in the car, like you need to change the oil every 3,000, because it's just such a brand new technology, and it basically became a virtual reality manual for them. So they get a hold of it up to the car, and it would tell them this is where you put the fluid for the windshield washer when it runs out. Useful for a lot of people. Okay, so I know that was random and all over the place, but I hope you got an answer out of there somewhere.
Yeah.
But man, talking about diversity in Mexico.
Yeah, there are a lot of kind of people, from the people who are enthusiastic for the technology, and the people who doesn't know what to do with a phone.
Well, you know, but I grew up in Las Cruces with some people, you know, that it was like, I don't want a phone. Back when we had these phones, she still didn't want one. She's like, what's wrong with going out on the porch and just saying, hey, which is what we did in our neighborhood growing up. But so I don't know. There's like, I think there's a push and pull here. I wouldn't necessarily say everyone needs technology. I would say that when we do feel it would really, when we can see a way it would really change their life and make a difference, we should be braver about putting it in place, because it's not going to be as expensive as it used to be.
Let me ask you something. Do you know Mazda City?
Which city?
Mazda. In Abu Dhabi.
No.
Mazda City, it's a city that it's like for the future, you know?
Okay, from the ground up.
Yeah.
I read about that.
And they talk about the energy that they took from the sun and from the earth, and they try to do everything to have technology everywhere, all that stuff. What do you think about the cities of the future?
Well, we don't always get the opportunity to just take a piece of blank land in the desert and just purpose build a city, although it's been happening for a long time.
Yes.
You go back to Europe and there's whole castles that were that. You go to certain parts of America in the 50s, it was very popular to take a parcel of land and just build a brand new community. But to me, I'm more interested in what's going to happen to the existing cities and how they're going to transform than just this like brand new like prototype vision of a city. And I really think it's going to I'm a little too obsessed with transportation, but when you put it all together, the technologies we have for, well, it goes like this. The car is going to completely change.
Yeah.
Roads are going to completely change. What we call garages in North America and parking lots are going to completely change. And they're going to begin looking like very different. We're going to be able to solve the fume problem very easily because we're going to lay it out to the scale of robotics rather than the scale of humans, right? So we have a gas station on every corner for the reason that humans procrastinate and forget to fill up their car. But we could create a hydrogen economy very easily if we had robots doing the driving, because we could put 3 filling stations on the edge of the city beside of Querétaro, and the robots would just drive to them at 3 a.m. and fill up and come back, or they would switch places, right? So you don't need 100 filling stations anymore, right? The cars themselves, if it's a self-driving car, it can park itself, which means that you could dig a little 5-foot by 5-foot box underneath your house and it could just drive in there. Or it could just circle the neighborhood, giving other people rides until you need it again. This means we don't need parking lots anymore. It means that our garages can be freed up. The places we put our cars now can be freed up. And what could we do with those spaces? Well, maybe we could put a little micro making station. So in other words, it's got the 3D printer of the future is able to just print out devices that work, right? So it's just there. It's on-demand goods. Also, maybe we'll have produce as a service. So there'll be like a hydroponics. So you'll be able to just go get your vegetables from the garage. So that whole area changes, and a lot of what we're seeing happening with power, right? It's power is becoming distributed on a micro scale, so everyone has their own solar cell, right? Which is something Mexico's been doing a lot longer than the U.S. actually. Now everyone would have their own little hardware store and their own little grocery store as well, and it's fully distributed, which means all the economies of scale we see today, which is based on having to go to the store and come back. It's about consolidating things will change, and things will get distributed in a brand new way.
How many years do you think this will going to happen?
That was like a 50-year out vision. But the autonomous vehicles in the U.S. anyways,
less?
2 years. 2 years they'll be on. I mean, they're on the road now. In trials,
right?
In 2 years, you'll be able to buy one that parks itself, a luxury version, right? In 2 years, you'll also be taking more Ubers that have no drivers in them. In 2 to 5 years, there's going to be a huge disruption of the trucking and freight industry, where trucks drive themselves primarily on the freeway. Then inner city travel, so more cars are going to be allowed to pilot themselves when you're on the freeway. There'll be special lanes set aside for them, and they'll be allowed, once the familiarity level of those two things go, cars that park themselves and freeway driving, it'll just turn over. I think within 15 years, they'll be nearly ubiquitous.
And what about unemployment?
It's going to be serious. We're going to have to find new jobs to do, because a lot of these jobs that we did before. So we got to think about that a little bit. What will be these jobs that people do in the future, right? When we get rid of all the taxi drivers. Well, for one, there's going to need to be a lot of fleet management, first of all. I mean, if you have all these autonomous cars driving around, they still need to be serviced, right? And so there's going to be a certain amount of that going on. There's also going to be a certain amount of what computers are very bad at. There's some physicists who really talk about, even with machine learning, computers are particularly bad at like recognizing who you are or what certain objects are. And we're going to need humans to pick up that slack. And I think there's going to be a certain amount of empathy. There might be a whole industry around empathy and social currency, because the computers are going to be very bad about that. So, like, I don't. Speculating on what that could be is really hard, but it.
Psychology services, but kind of different from.
More like, hey, I'll hang out in the Uber with you.
Yeah, that's so
So you don't have to ride by yourself. nothing to do. That may happen by a telepresence, but no, it's going to be robotics are going to be very disruptive. They are going to bring the cost of things down, but then we're going to need to think about what jobs will people do.
So you think it will be soon when you need maybe some tacos, and a drone is going to come here and bring you the tacos, right?
That would be amazing.
I think drones, I put a longer timeline on drones than cars simply because of the fallout of the air and hit somebody on the head problem. But it doesn't necessarily have to just be drones, but that is going to happen. And when that happens, that's going to really change our views on ownership and supply. So even autonomous vehicles, you think less about needing to own it because it can always be there when you want. But if a drone, there was something on Facebook recently, I can't remember the guy said, if a drone, if these drones could bring these tacos anywhere, right? Okay, tacos is one way to think about it, but think about a hammer, right? So if we needed a hammer right now, today we have to own the hammer. And we have to carry the hammer around with us. So everyone owns a hammer, right? So there's like one relationship of hammer to people. That's a lot of metal and wood and plastic. Yeah. But if a drone could, if I could just say, I really need a hammer and put my hand out, and a drone showed up and put the hammer in my hand, well now every person doesn't have to have a hammer. We only need enough hammers to provide a hammer in everyone's hands in the time that they need it. We turn into a just-in-time economy. The implication of this on resources is massive. I think that's the way to think about the drone taco thing. It's fun to think about tacos showing up, but it was way more crazy to think about hammers showing up. And then that was someone else's thought. I can't remember who their name is, but you guys could look it up and subtitle it. Here's another thought, okay? Because drones will fall out of the air and land on people's heads, right? But if you have autonomous vehicles and they're all going around the city at the same time, right? It seems very chaotic, right? So imagine they had a little thing on the back that allowed them to take a package, right? And so as they were taking you to school or to work, and they pass a depot, it would just push a package in there. And then as they went here and they made a turn here, there was a car here, and the computer figured out that car was going to go this 10 yards, so it shoved the package over to it. And this is the way ants work, right? So you'd have these packages just spiraling out the city, and they could show up anywhere at any time, and you wouldn't have to worry about a case of beer falling on your head, but you could have a case of beer show up in just a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, and it would all be using the same infrastructure that's just transporting people around, so you don't need a UPS truck anymore, and you might not even need little robots in the neighborhood. Yeah, I think that's the way we should. So you don't have to rely on just the drones to get this kind of hammer in your hand thing coming, and that's going to change the future.
For me, the last question. Here in the Good Out Fest, they are showing us some things about virtual reality. So let's talk about entertainment. Do you think in the future we are going to have all these virtual worlds where we can go and play and all that stuff?
The metaverse, is it real?
What do you think?
The metaverse from Snow Crash? Yes, of course. I mean, especially for certain segments of society that want to socialize that way. And we see them already doing it today. We saw them before with the invention of the horse. There were, the minute they brought horses to the plains in the U.S., I guarantee you there were a bunch of teenagers gathering together on their horses, right? And then there were a bunch of teenagers who didn't, right? So that's what I mean by there's different kinds of people. Technology always has this effect that it changes the way people hang out and socialize and seek entertainment in the type of games they play. So that's going to happen. But it's not going to replace human interaction. I'm not a believer in that at all, because there'll be another segment of society, there'll be age groups, there'll be different groups where people just want to be face to face.
About virtual reality, Daniel and I were talking some hours ago that it was very specific public for virtual reality, and I think it's very intrusive, and some people reject virtual reality because of that. How, as a designer, how you think virtual reality can be more approachable?
By making it less virtual. So I like to talk about integrated reality. So I'm a little bigger fan of augmented reality. Now there's certain times you want to be in an immersive space, just like there's certain times you want to be in a movie theater. But there's other times where you just want digital lifestyle to be present in your real world. So the spoilers for my presentation, but we really want to have digital markup of the physical world, and I call that an integrated reality. And certain technologies like projection, the things that get close to it now would be augmented reality like Google Glass or HoloLens. But I think increasingly we're going to use projection and other technologies to fill space with digital interfaces, inputs and outputs.
Like augmented reality, right?
Yeah, so a second ago, imagine we had a little bit of computer vision up here and a couple of projectors up there that were on gimbals that were robotic, right? And a couple of seconds ago, we were just talking about a video on Facebook that we couldn't remember who the guy was. I would just say, that video on Facebook, and it would just project the video right here, right? And it would use computer vision to know that I had asked for it and where to put it. It would see this wall and know the colors, so it could adjust the colors of the projection. And all of a sudden, we just have that here. We wouldn't have to put on glasses or anything to find it. It just would be an integrated reality. The digital and the physical will be integrated together. I think that will improve the experience greatly because we'll still be able to be humans. We'll be able to be these superhumans, and our digital self, which exists, and what we're going into virtual reality and Facebook to play with, could just join us in the real world. It would be awesome.
Well, thank you very much to be here in Mexico. For talking with us. We are the people.
Party is starting.
Yeah,
the lights are.
Yeah, the people is saying that's our signal to say goodbye. But first, tell the people who is watching us where they can ask you questions.
Oh, I always use Twitter for these kinds of things, and my Twitter handle is @JaredRock. That's JaredRawk. Jared Rock.
Okay.
Rock.
Okay.
Because the W gives extra rock.
Thank you very much. Y bueno, nosotros vamos a seguir por aquí, por el Cutout Fest, aquí en Querétaro. Muchísimas gracias, Vale.
Gracias.
Y bueno, seguimos aquí. Síganle en Isopixel.
Adiós, buenas noches.
Y nos vamos por unos tacos.